Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here with the Impact Under Siege review for the 15th of May 2021. Again, I don't support the concept of these network purviews for a company that doesn't need them. They're lucky to have a television deal, and I think trying to make oneself appear bigger just by giving content that's at times decent, at other times subpar, is unnecessary. I mean, they're struggling to get a 250,000 viewers a week. I don't think they've had that in many years, and it strikes me as a company that's holding on, and they need to be rebranding and doing something different than the rest of the wrestling world, not being a desperate, third or fourth string company. Anyway, that being said, there is some good stuff on here. Brian Myers defeating a Black Taurus with Decay. Story of the match is pretty basic. Taurus has a power advantage over Myers, but there are certainly a numbers advantage outside the ring with Crazy Steve and Rosemary. And basically, the attack of Steve in the middle of the match and gets Taurus from behind. Myers works over Taurus for a couple of minutes. Top rope crossbody brings things back in Taurus's alignment. Taurus then has a couple of dives, which for big guys should have been saved for a bigger match, bigger show. But near falls after crucifix bomb and a shoulder breaker, but can't keep Myers down. A couple more near falls. Myers manages to land the roster cut out of nowhere after he pokes Taurus in the eye. Myers wins. I guess that's fine enough. D'Lo Brown and Matt Striker run down tonight's card. Probably the best two-person announced team in wrestling right now because they don't overhype to the point of wanting to strangle them. Taylor Wilde and Tennille Dashwood with Caleb with a K, defeating Kimberly and Susan. Throwaway match that doesn't really need to seem to be here. Not much of a match, really. Wild does not want a team with Dashwood. That's basically the idea. They get a team win, though, against Susan and Lee. Short match, doesn't really need to be there. Very little heat from the heels. Dashwood's taken out. Wild had to deal with Susan and Lee by herself. Caleb assists Wild by kicking Susan and setting up for Wild to pin her. Wild doesn't see this, but she still doesn't want to celebrate the win with Dashwood. I don't know. They're building towards Dashwood and Wild, which I think is a waste of energy. I don't like Dashwood. To me, is not a national company talent under any circumstance. Sami Callihan cuts his promo about going through the roster if necessary to win everything, including the championship again. Ace Austin, Madman Fulton defeating Triple XL, AC Romero and Larry D, TJP and PD Williams, and Rahat Raju and Sheer to win the number one contenders spot. I hate these multi-person matches. I've made that clear before. Match itself starts with Fulton and Romano going at it, but they basically go from person to person and competitor to competitor. Every pair had to be tagged in. There's a whole bunch of super heavyweights in there, and then there's cruiserweights, so the size differences is there. Basically, I mean, it was an interesting match, but not something that needed to be there. It really felt like throwing matches and people out there just because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Match slows down, and Shira and Raju cut off Williams to keep him in their corner. Austin and Fulton get in, and they work over TJP, and they cut the ring off on him. Commentary starts to sell that TJP and Williams were the only team that really getting tired. Everyone else got to rest. Williams gets hot tag against Austin, but Austin's able to cut him off. Triple XL had enough and decided to get in the ring and take out everyone. Final few minutes of the match, pick up with some speed. Every team steals tags at one point or another in an attempt to end the match. But there's too many people involved, and it basically turns into a smudge that nobody watches unless you're like a 10-year-old kid who just likes chaos. Finish comes when Fulton takes out both Romero and D, ending with an assisted plancha for Austin and pin for Andy for the win. Ace Austin Fulton against the team of Finn Juice in the future doesn't seem like a horrible thing. I love Ace Austin. I think he's the best thing that Impact has going for itself. Gia Miller interviews Hogan and Steels about their match. They said they're regaining the tag titles from their opponents tonight. Mosley defeats Willie Mack, which makes sense. Mack starts hot, and he goes right after his opponent at the bell. Then makes Morrissey walk away to regroup. Morrissey recovers for a minute. Morrissey kicks Mack with the big boot and works him over for a couple of minutes. Mack makes a comeback, but it's very short term. Beatdown continues most of the match. Mack did make a decent enough comeback with a couple of near falls, but in the end, Morrissey cuts him off again and destroys Mack with a big boot to the back of the head, and it was fine. I don't necessarily think that a new guy should have sold this much for a flat talent like Willie Mack, but hey, that's what we do in wrestling these days. Post-match, Morrissey keeps attacking Mack, and he's about to use a chair. Rich Swann makes his first appearance since losing the world title. He and Mack clear the ring before a stare down between Morrissey and Swann. I don't think that's a good match for either one. I think it sends them backwards, but whatever. Fire and Flava, Hogan and Steels defeat Jordana Grace and Rachel Ellering to win the Knockouts Tag Team title. This is a rematch from a couple of weeks ago. Hogan and Steels jump Grace and Ellering at the start of the match. Champions managed to control most of the early part of the match with power advantage. Hogan gets tossed around for several minutes. Steels gets in to help cut off Ellering, and they cut the ring in half. And they turn the match around for themselves. Hogan and the Steels work over Ellering for a decent long time. Constant tags. Ellering is down on the mat and switches between kicks and submissions with an occasional tease of Grace in the corner. Grace makes a hot tag and leads both teams chasing the pin, trading big moves, and at the end, it comes down to Steels and Grace, and we see a Vader bomb before getting cut off. Outside the ring, Hogan takes out Ellering with a sliced bread on the floor, but in ring, Grace goes for the superplex. Steels blocks and drops Grace with a frog splash and a win, and wins the match. And then we see Fire and Flav get the two-time women's tag team champions. This is fine. Then we see a pointless skit with the Swingers Palace thing. Triple XL wants to get a bet on the championship match at the end of the night, but it doesn't get anywhere. Just a filler segment. Anyway, El Fantasmo against Josh Alexander. Alexander wins. Decent story. Story of the match is that Alexander is better at technical wrestling, but he has an advantage when it comes to power. Apparently the boot of Phantasmo is apparently loaded. Stomps and kicks do end up working against Alexander, furthering that story. Alexander delivers a couple of desperation attacks here and there because Alexander is better and stronger even when injured. Last couple of minutes, Alexander starts to go after the ankle lock pretty aggressively. Phantasmo goes for the super kick several times, can't make contact. Alexander goes for the divine intervention, but Phantasmo counters. Alexander locks in the ankle lock, powerbomb into the knee after a couple of stomps, and gets a submission. Decent match for Phantasmo. Um, I don't necessarily think that Alexander is a guy that I would build around, but if you're going to try something new, you got to commit to it and give it a few months to unfold. Gia Miller interviews Finjuice. Edwards and Robinson say there wouldn't be any interference because everyone is in the ring. Finley hypes the match, saying that the combination and some of the greatest active wrestlers today. I agree in part with this. And with 3 matches to go, the show's beginning to drag. Knockout champion Deanna Purrazzo with Kimberly and Susan defeats Havoc to retain the title. This is good. Havoc is really the first major power challenger in terms of power wrestler that Purrazzo has faced since winning the championship. Story of the match is the clash of styles between the two. Havoc makes a couple of comebacks using her strength to power out of Purrazzo's holds. Havoc would end up on her knees. Purrazzo works the arm. Havoc gets her biggest offense, locking in single leg Boston Crab, taking out Susan and Lee, but then goes for the running kicks. Purrazzo dodges and brings her down to the mat and submitted Havoc with the Fujiwara armbar. And then we go to Eddie Edwards and Finjuice, Robinson and Finley, defeating Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers. I don't know. If I have Omega and he's the champion for the second biggest company in the world, would I waste him in a 6-man tag? No. Would I take the tag team champions who are here from Japan and waste them in a 6-man tag? No. I know that there's this misnomer that good wrestling matches matter more than story, but in reality, story is what draws people in, and no one ever paid to see a moonsault, but lots of people pay to see good story. Match starts with a back and forth tag match between Finjuice and the Good Brothers. Neither team gains a real advantage. Power from the Good Brothers versus more finesse from Finjuice, and then leads to Edwards versus Omega for the first time. I'm glad to see that. I've known Eddie since 2004, and it's great to see a guy like that get a larger stage. Hopefully this leads to Eddie Edwards in AEW at some point. Match continues with Omega versus Robinson. There's a bunch of offense. Robinson comes out better. Proof that sometimes leaving the WWE system can, in fact, lead you to a good place overall. Anderson and Gallows getting involved, allowing Omega to cut Robinson off. Finley gets the hot tag, goes nuts against Anderson, but he's cut off by teamwork and cheating from Omega. Anderson and Gallows, in the end, it built to a second level face-off between Edwards and Omega. Edwards gets himself a near fall with a Blue Thunder Bomb. Edwards hits a Tiger Bomb for another near fall. Omega hits a bunch of V-triggers and Snapdragon suplexes. Finish sees Finjuice stop a Magic Killer. Finley hits a stunner on Anderson and Pulp Friction by Robinson and the Boston Knee Party by Edwards for the win. I think this was a good deal in the sense of I think you have to give Impact some wins. And if you're going to have a throwaway 6-man like this, is a good way to make sure that your Impact exclusive talent, is necessary. So the announcement is that Austin and Fulton challenge Finjuice for the tag team championships on the next Impact. That's definitely worth going out of your way to see. The 6-person cluster match here. Moose defeats Trey Miguel, Chris Bay, Matt Cardona, Chris Sabin, and Sami Callihan to be the number 1 contender for the Impact World Championship. Match itself is Moose taking everyone out, and Bay and Sabin super kicks finally get him off his feet after he clears the ring for a good couple of minutes. Match continues, everyone coming in and out of the ring. And then they're taken out. Um, Tandem dive from Bay and Miguel. Things slow down a little bit inside the ring after that. Bay hits a German on Callahan on the ropes, and Callahan brings down Cardona with a superplex, only for Saban and Miguel to drop kick Bay off the ropes. These cluster spots, it's not a fight. It's ballet, and I hate it because if I want to sell that wrestling is real athletics, I want to be able to sell that what happens hurts. I don't want to be able to sell that they're all working together. Um, and so, anyway, Callahan introduces Chair into the match, but there's no disqualification in the match. Callahan continues cheating in order to gain momentum, but Good Brothers run out, pull Callahan out, and take him out of the match indirectly. Saban gets a great near fall after hitting a cradle shock, but is stopped by Moose, who delivers the series of 3 lights out spears for the win. Kenny Omega and Moose is where we're building to the next pay-per-view. Not necessarily sure that that's where you want to go, but at the same time, if you want to have exclusivity, Moose could be a decent guy to beat Omega. I don't imagine them plugging that a great deal on AEW, but who knows. Anyway, we'll be back with more of the WCW Saturday Night Review series. We've got over 1,300 audios from all points in wrestling. Would love your feedback and also for you to subscribe. Take care.